Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Season 3, Harmonizing Light and Shadow to Embody Your Mystical Power and Purpose. I'm your host, Washela Sananda, and today it's my pleasure to introduce you to Getrude Matshe. Welcome, Getrude.
Thank you for having me on your show, Ashela.
I'm so delighted to have you, and I'm really looking forward to sharing you with the audience. So, before we dive in, I'm going to read just a little bit about what you're up to in the world. Getrude Matshe is an inspirational speaker who has been described as a vibrant bundle of African energy whose zest and passion for life inspires everyone she meets. She is passionate about helping people achieve their full potential, find their individual life purpose, and create success. This makes her an energetic, inspirational, and enlightening speaker. Getrude has written several books and is also a book writing coach, and so much more. That's just for starters. So, because it's the first time I've had you on, and much of my audience probably doesn't know you yet, I would love for you to share kind of your origin story. And you have so much to share, and we got to talk about this previously, but I'd love for you to kind of share what launched you on your path to creating all of the amazing things you've created in your life.
Wow. Okay. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity to share who I am. I was born in a small little village called Wedza on the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe and Mozambique. So I am from Zimbabwe originally. My maternal grandfather was from Mozambique. My paternal grandfather was from Malawi, and they came down and settled in what was Rhodesia, married women from there, and with colonialism, they never went back to their countries of origin. I was born in a family of 5. I have an older sister, 3 little brothers, and my parents were the people who I give credit to everything I've done that I've succeeded in life. You know, my dad got a scholarship when he was 27, the year I was born in 1967, giving away my age. And he got a scholarship to go and study in London through the Catholic Church. And on his way to London, he stopped in Rome and he took a picture standing on the Colosseum in Rome. Now, I became an entrepreneur when I was 6, and I would make money by tidying my father's wardrobe. I'd fold all his clothes and he would leave pocket money in his pockets. And one day I found this old pair of shoes at the bottom of the wardrobe and I was about to throw them in the bin. And my dad walked into the bedroom and he said, "What are you doing? Those shoes are magic." And I said, "They're old. I'm throwing them out." He said, No, wait. Let me show you something. And he pulled out this photograph in his wallet. And it was the picture of him standing on the steps of the Colosseum in Rome. And he said, "Do you see these shoes?" I said, "Yes." And he turned them over. They had no soles. They actually had newspapers. He pulled out the newspaper. It was dated 1967, the year that I was born. And he said he was so poor, he could not afford to buy a new pair of shoes to get on that plane. But he had a dream. And he said, if you can dream, you can go anywhere you want in the world. And so he sowed this seed of possibility in me, that anything was possible. Anything I wanted was possible. And my dad was a traveler. He ended up going all over the world. And so I became a traveler because of that. And money has never been a limitation for me. Once I have an idea ingrained in my brain, I have a weird way of kind of working things out. My mother, on the other hand, was the entrepreneur. My mother could sell snow to the Eskimos. She was so charismatic and, oh God, I miss her. And I would go with her when she sold her goods. I went to private school. I went to all white schools my whole life in Rhodesia when we had racial segregation like in the United States. And we had to help to make the money for the school fees by making crafts. She taught me how to knit, how to sew, how to crochet. On the weekends, we would go and sell all of these things in the white neighborhoods. She had this tenacity and goals that she would set for herself on a weekend. She was a nurse professionally. My dad was a chartered accountant. But when they came back to Rhodesia, my father could not get a white collar job because he was Black. So he had to work in a chicken slaughtering factory, killing chickens. And they relied on my mother's income for 5 children to go to private school. So we had to work, we had to hustle. And so I learned so much from my mom about sales, about engaging with people. And she would say that people have two choices when you sell. They can say yes or they can say no. If they say yes, you've made your sale. If they say no, don't be insulted. They just don't need what you're selling. Go and knock on the next door. That's where you'll make your sale. So I've ingrained that in everything that I do. And I have to thank my parents for that. I eventually got married, lived in South Africa for 7 years while I studied. My ex-husband also was studying to become a doctor. And then we moved to New Zealand in 1999. So I've been in New Zealand for the last, 20 years. And then the magic happened when I landed in this country. I became an entrepreneur. I was trained as a systems analyst. So IT was my first profession. I'm a first generation coder, hated my job in computers, but it paid well when I was in Africa. But when I got to New Zealand, I started seeing numerous opportunities to become an entrepreneur. Hit on my first $1 million business, recruiting medical staff and doctors, coming to New Zealand and Australia. I went into property investing. When Peter Jackson was filming Lord of the Rings, because I'm a storyteller, I started stalking him. He was giving lectures and talks all over Wellington, where I live, talking about the making of this movie. And I always had a dream to be a filmmaker. So I would attend these lectures. And one day I'm at the back of the room. He's giving a lecture, and I put up my hand and I asked if I could act in the next film. And by chance, they were actually casting for King Kong. So I got involved in the making of King Kong, went back to school to be a filmmaker, and then James Cameron came and did Avatar. And I actually supplied all the ethnic extras that took part in both films. And I'm on this road to be a filmmaker myself now. So New Zealand has given me that possibility not to hold back. My latest venture is a social impact movement called Her Story, where I look for 100 women to come and share their stories at an event. It's all about changing the world one story at a time, one woman at a time. We have a wide range of topics from business and entrepreneurship, health and wellness, family and relationships, creativity, spirituality, and social justice. And I try and mentor women who have never spoken to find their voices, to stand up and speak, because I believe that as a woman, if you can articulate your ideas, it transcends in what you're doing at work. It impacts on your relationship with the man that you're with. And the most exciting thing is it's generational. You become the role model for your daughter and your sons and your grandchildren and your great grandchildren. So we are trying to connect 1 million women in the next year with an online platform similar to yours. And I'm really excited to be able to share this with your community today.
Yeah, and that was the first point that we connected on. We both do summits, and very different formats, but we're in that world of interviewing and filming, and so that was how we originally found each other. And I'd love to dig in a little bit to your background of something you said to me when in our first conversation was that it was a great blessing to you that you were born poor, as it made you who you are, and how you also talked about how your life was so full of synchronicities and divine guidance, and how you've really been you felt led intuitively throughout your life. And so I'd love to kind of get into that. There, where some people would look at being born poor as a negative. How did you turn that into a positive for yourself? And also, how were you led synchronistically throughout your life, and to just kind of tie in that mystical piece of your experience to where you've ended up at this point?
Okay, for a start, I only realized I was really poor when I was little, or we lived in poverty when I left Africa. When I started telling my stories of how my sister and I would look for grasshoppers for lunch, or we would cook field mice. And while we were there, we were surrounded with abundance. I actually don't ever remember being hungry, but I do remember that our diet was mainly starch, cornmeal, salt water was the main meal. But the abundance came in this seeing opportunities. You know, when you come from a very poor community, you're forced to think on your feet. You're forced to be creative. And so it's helped me in life in that when things go really wrong for me and I hit rock bottom, I actually get excited because when I'm at my lowest point is when I'm the most creative. Because I tell myself the only way from where I am is up. I can't get any lower than that. So it's given me a certain mindset, a certain way of thinking. And the magic for me really happened when I started paying attention to the people who crossed my path. You know, it's like the way that you and I met. This was a chance meeting on LinkedIn. You responded to a request that I put out to connect with you. And we started talking, and we discovered we had so many little similarities, and our ways of thinking are very, very similar and spiritual. So the spiritual philosophy that I grew up with is called Ubuntu. The literal translation of this word, Ubuntu ngamuntu ngabantu, says, a person is a person through other people. So I pay attention to the people who come into my life. I could be standing in a bank queue waiting for my turn. I'm that crazy woman who talks to random strangers everywhere. If I walk into a lift, everybody looks towards the door. I look the other way and I start talking to people and I make them laugh. And I have met so many amazing people by this way of being. And all of my opportunities have come through the people that I meet. So I'm very, very present. I think that most people sleepwalk through life, thinking about where they're going, thinking about what they did before they left home, to a point where when they're surrounded by strangers, they're not even aware of the people around them. And that's where the magic really is. It's always in the moment when you're present.
Mm.
So I am one of those people who people say to me, Gertrude, you're very lucky. How did you meet this person? Or how did you do that? And I can't honestly take any credit for it. It's the people that I've met who've given me a hand up, who've pointed me in the right direction, who've given me advice, and I'm not scared to ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Ah, beautiful. And I love how you bring that, in the in the world of spirituality, you'll hear often we're all one, we all come from the same source, one family, one world. But Ubuntu, am I saying that right? Ubuntu?
Ubuntu, Ubuntu.
Ubuntu
Yes. Mhm.
is, and your embodiment of that is really the demonstration of we're all one. It doesn't matter, where you came from, where you're going, what color you are, what city you grew up in. It's that willingness to get to know someone, to interact, to learn about them, and because we're all connected, and I really feel that from you. I feel that soul, that connection, and that, also infinite curiosity. Like, let's discover what there is to learn here about this other person. And I appreciate that so much. I think in Western civilization, we're removed from that. We're not, we don't trust that as much. And so I love that as a foundation. Um,
Africa, we have to be that way because your very existence hinges on the others. We're very communal.
mhm.
No man is an island. So if you come into an African community, Even if you're a stranger, you're welcomed as if you're part of the family. And the way my grandmother used to describe Ubuntu, she would say that humanity, the human race, is like the human body. We are cells of the same entity. So if you cut your fingers and you start to bleed, your white blood cells will rush to that point to heal it. In a week's time, you can't even see the scar. And that's how we should be responding and reacting to each other in the world. So that if there's an earthquake in Haiti and the 7 billion people on the planet gave just $1 to Haiti, we can restore a country in a heartbeat, in a day. But most of humanity is living in a sense of not enoughness and scarcity and me and not we. And I think what's happening right now with the coronavirus is a really good illustration of Ubuntu, that we are one. We are literally a breath away from affecting and infecting each other. If one human being is not okay on the planet right now, we're all not okay. So I'm here in New Zealand, we're COVID free. You know, we went into lockdown straight away. And we had 25 deaths, 1,500 infections. People just complied. We stayed home. We followed the guidelines. And life is just back to normal. And we're watching in horror what's unfolding in the rest of the world. And what's actually happening is containers coming from the US, coming from the UK, are bringing the virus here. We had a reinfection in Auckland because of that. So we are so intertwined, and I'm hoping that the gift that COVID gives humanity is for us to remember that,
Mm.
to remember and think about our neighbor next door and just check in and see if they're okay. I lived in this street for 20 years. I didn't know anybody until last year. One of our neighbors came and dropped letters in everybody's letterbox, and we created a Facebook group, and now the whole community, we know each other. But up until this point, we didn't. So there's some gifts that are coming out of what is actually happening in the world.
Mm. Yeah, that's a important perspective to just see, you know, like it demonstrates how connected we truly are. And again, at the heart, we're all here in this together. Um, if you're willing to tell the story, there was a poignant story you told me that that was so powerful about when you went to Bali and you went really kind of through a dark night of the soul physically, and yet you had this beautiful experience of rising up out of that, and kind of it seems like that shifted the trajectory of the rest of your life. Would you share some about that experience?
So, Indonesia, Bali is my spiritual resting place. I fell in love with that country. I first visited when I came to New Zealand in 2001. I was speaking at a conference. And so I have always been donating towards causes that are about children. It started in Zimbabwe, where I wrote a book and I started selling my book and speaking to sell the book. And so I support orphaned children all over the world. And I've been to 56 countries. I can't tell you how many cities in between. I went back to Bali in 2017. I had gone through a separation, a divorce. I was depressed. I was overweight. And I was actually living in the United States, in New Mexico. And my kids said, Mom, you better come back home. Come and get proper health care. I was slowly deteriorating. So I came back on holiday, went to visit my sons in Auckland. My daughter lives in Australia. And on the way back to the US, she said, Mom, you've got to stop. You've got to slow down. Here is a 10-day vacation to Bali. I know you love Bali. Just take it easy. And on the ninth day, the day before I was supposed to come back, I collapsed in a rice field. I was just walking, sightseeing, woke up 5 days later in intensive care, and I had congestive heart failure. When I look back at that incident, so many things happened that kind of remind me of why I'm here. First of all, I reconnected with a young woman who I had helped in an orphanage in Bali. She's like my Balinese daughter. I met her when she was 18 in this orphanage, and they had 4 girls who had turned 18 and they couldn't afford to send them to college. I asked how much it would cost. It was $500 a year. So I committed to fundraising for these 4 girls, gave each of them my business card when I first met them, hoping they would stay in touch with me. And I heard nothing for 7 years. The one who did find me on Facebook was now 28, 7 years later. And so I normally visit her, I normally stay with her, but this particular trip, I didn't go and see her. When I did collapse, I did not have my ID on me. I did not tell the taxi driver which hotel I was in. So because of traffic, he was picking me up at the corner of the street, and he just knew my name was Getrude, and that was it. But this taxi driver saved my life. The doctor said that if he didn't put me on his back and into his taxi and drive me to the nearest hospital, I would not be here if he had waited for an ambulance. I woke up 5 days later in intensive care. My children are there, and I'm thinking, how did anybody know how to contact my kids? I was out for 5 days. But the miracle was that I had gone and had lunch with Victoria. I used the same taxi driver that week. So he remembered that young girl, and he went and saw her and said, look, the woman I was with yesterday is in hospital. I just know her name is Getrude. I need to get hold of her family. She didn't have her ID on her. And because I had taken my children to Indonesia on holiday, she was connected to all of my kids on Facebook. So my life kind of went full circle. You know, I had helped this little girl in this orphanage when she was 18. And almost 15 years later, she helped me. And that's how connected we are as human beings, if you pay attention. The other thing that happened to me by being ill is that I had to have an angiogram. So an angiogram is when they want to check if your coronary arteries are clear. They cut an incision in your wrist and they inject a dye. And you're hooked up to a machine. There's a screen in front of you. And I could see the dye going into my heart, but the anesthetic didn't work. So I could feel the surgeon cutting into my wrist. And I was screaming with pain. And he said to me, Gertrude, I've got to keep going. It just takes 5 minutes. If I stop, you've been on blood thinners for 5 days, you will bleed, and I have to cut you somewhere else. So the procedure had to proceed, and I am in pain, watching my heart. And I had a conversation with my heart. And I said, why? Why are you doing this to me? And then something happened. My heart answered back. And it said, Gertrude, you have done this to me. You're not going to die. You have forgotten to take care of me. I'm pumping oxygen and blood into every single cell in your body to keep you alive, but you've forgotten to take care of me. It was transformational on a number of levels. You know, our bodies are a vehicle that our spirits reside. And we need to honor this physical thing that's called our bodies and take care of it. I had stopped exercising. I was on antidepressants. I was packing on the weight. And my poor system just could not cope with how heavy I was at that time. But I also believe that the old me died in that rice field. The new me came through. And now sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror and I'm seeing the transformation of who I was in 2017 and who I am now, it's almost as if a metamorphosis. I was in a cocoon. The weight was a protection. It was something that I had to incubate my soul to then come out and be a full expression of who I really am. And that's the game that I'm playing now. Nothing holds me back. All of the fears that I had, you know, each time I think of a business idea, I just go for it full throttle. And I just use the power that I have to visualize what the end result looks like. And then the right people start showing up. The right ideas start coming through my dreams. And it's a magical way to live. I think when you've had a brush with death 1 or 2 times, you take every single breath with gratitude. It was a life-changing experience.
Wow, beautiful. I love that. Every breath with gratitude. It's like that brush, that near death experience or whatever you want to call it, that experience took you into greater appreciation for yourself as a physical being and a spiritual being, and just allowed you to step into a more full expression of your truth and your purpose.
True. And I learned that your health is your wealth.
Mm.
If you don't take care of yourself, if you're not taking care of your body, that is where your wealth lies. Because it's been really hard to get up and move and get my health back. It's been a real struggle for 3 years, but I'm slowly on the right track now.
Mm.
So if any of you are out there and you have had a health challenge, just don't give up. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. When I came out of hospital, I couldn't walk 5 steps without being breathless. I couldn't go upstairs. I felt like an old woman and I was like 49 years old. It was the most horrible feeling in the world. But now I ride 40 kilometers every day on my bike and I'm really feeling good. So
Mm.
just don't give up. Do it one step at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah, and you're so vibrant and creative and just in this constant expression of your purpose. And I really want to talk now. I'd like to dive into her story and what you're doing with that. And you were sharing some of that with me the other day about how you're reaching people and women and sharing their stories and teaching them to share their stories. And that's only one layer of it, because through the charity work that you're doing with this program, you're supporting, is it orphanages, or tell me about
Oh,
the back end, the
okay.
charity that you're doing. I don't want to mess
so,
it up.
so her story is a social impact movement where we empower women to learn to share their stories from an empowered space. We create a safe space for healing. In Africa, storytelling is used on a number of levels. When you tell your story to someone else, it's now shared with the other. It's not yours to carry alone. So we get a lot of women who have had horrendous personal experiences. You know, in Africa, we don't have counseling, we don't have proper healthcare systems. The healing comes in the community, where if a woman is raped, she will go and talk to another woman and share her experience. If a woman is being battered by her husband, the women in the community are there to hold space and listen to her and empower her. So in the sharing of stories, you find healing in yourself. In the sharing of stories, another woman who's hearing you speak might be experiencing something similar. They might have gone through a similar experience. And in watching you standing in your strength, they find light at the end of the tunnel for what they're going through. So I coach women who have never spoken before. And the women who have spoken become the examples, they become the mentors within our circles. One of the things we're trying to do is that in every single location where we have a presence, we look for social impact projects to support. We look for women in the community, those unsung heroes who have a soup kitchen and they're helping feed 100 people every day. We look for people who are working with children. So our focus is on women and children. And now with the pandemic, it's the elderly, the homeless, and the disabled. Grassroots projects where if we raise $10,000, we can have a massive impact. And it's been really fascinating because as we are sharing these stories, we are identifying all of these different projects. We curate all of the stories into a Her Story magazine, so they get published in a magazine, and an Her Story anthology book series. So we publish 10 women in a volume, and the proceeds from these books go towards our social impact projects. It's been really fascinating to watch everybody contributing their stories, helping us sell the books, and the women make money from the book sales as well. So it's like a win-win situation on both sides. We run workshops during the summit. You get to experience the woman speaking, and then the next day she runs a workshop. and it gives people a more closer, intimate time with the speakers. Some of our speakers are coaches, some of them are writers. Women are coming from a wide range of areas of expertise. And we get to pay our speakers by charging for the workshops. It's only $35. The speakers get $25, our conference gets 10. So if we attract 100 people into a workshop, our speakers are making $2,500 for a 1 hour workshop. It has been so fulfilling because in the connecting of women, because I come from a third world country, this platform is a bridge between women in the developed world and women in the developing world, so we can help pull our sisters up. I'm trying to appeal to women who are in the diaspora, who are not in their countries of origin, who have been dispersed as economic refugees like myself, as refugees because of war, women who've been dispersed because of slavery. We've got African American women, we've got women of African descent right across the globe. And my hope is that they can help us go back to Africa, create women's cooperatives. For example, when we started Her Story, we had to have swag bags. Our swag bags were made out of 100% African cotton. We bought sewing machines and overlockers and got 100 women in Africa to form a cooperative. So instead of going to a cheap Chinese manufacturer to get the bags were being made in Africa with 100% African cotton that they grow. And those are the kind of little projects that excite me because we can make a big difference with small amounts of money around the world if the money gets to the communities directly. I was sharing with you that in Zimbabwe, it costs $5 to send a child to school, 3 months of education, only $15 a year. But most children aren't going to school because people can't afford it. The average person in my village lives on the equivalent of 30 US cents a month. Zimbabwe is a country without a currency. We use US dollars. So all of these little challenges that are faced by women globally in third world countries can be resolved by women in the developing world saying, I want to be a part of this movement. I want to make a difference. I want to share my story of how I became an entrepreneur and help somebody in a third world country do the same. So it's really exciting to see women now connecting using these online platforms.
Mm.
It's been a fascinating 2 years so far.
Wow, that's incredible. And I know that you've already helped so many and that you have this mission to help, is it have a million or to touch a million women's lives with this work?
Yeah. So when we started, the idea was if I have 100 women who invite 10 friends, so all of our speakers have to nominate 10 other women to speak.
Mm.
We grew to 1,000 like that. Once we had 1,000, they tell 10 friends. Now we're 10,000. We tell 10 friends, we're 100,000. We tell 10 friends, we're 1,000,000.
Mm.
So we're at level 2 at the moment. We're almost 7,500 strong, and we're growing really fast. And I would love you guys to be part of this community.
Yeah, I know there are probably many, many women watching or men who know of a woman who would be perfect for this project. Now,
And
what are
we
the,
also invite men to speak. Sorry, I didn't
ah,
mention this.
okay.
You know, a lot of women's conferences and organizations are not bringing men to the table.
Mhm.
Until we start bringing men into the rooms where we discuss women's issues, nothing is going to change. So 25% of our speakers are men. We've had
Mm.
some amazing men who come and share their stories, who come and share their ideas. So we are open to men speaking as well.
Wonderful. I didn't know that part. That makes me
Yeah.
really happy because I don't ever want the men to be left out. I know my platform is, I believe the viewers are close to half, 50% men, 50% women. And, I love that men get to be a part of that too. And there are so many men who care about women's causes
Women's
and
issues.
desire that equality. And that's so important. I love that you said that. We must bring the men into the conversation to make the change. Absolutely. So I know that there are probably many who will resonate with what you're sharing and who would like to be a part of it. Are there certain qualifications, or how does someone become a speaker?
looking for people who have never had the courage to speak.
Mm.
I believe that if you can articulate your ideas, you can change the world. So don't be afraid to step up. And there is a lot of support you will get within the community. I run workshops preparing our speakers up until the dates where we have events. So over the whole of the month of March, we have 15 speakers a day from the 1st of March to the 31st. We're looking for 465 speakers. So please step up. You will get a lot of support and preparation. And it's a 15-minute presentation, very much like a TED Talk style, where we help you find what is your message. Why are you on this planet? What is the message you were born to give? And I believe that if you can find your message and articulate it and share it, your reason for being is fulfilled. I know that when I incarnated as an African woman, I chose this chocolate brown skin to come and share this magical African philosophy that can change the world. And I can do this 24/7. I was telling you when we first met that as a child, I was punished for speaking. I was that little girl at the back of the class, chatting and joking and laughing. I get paid to speak now. It's my biggest strength. So if you can find what your strength is and share it, that's where your passion lies. Then you can do it 24/7 every day without even thinking. People who know how to play soccer are not taught how to do it. They just know how to do it. And a lot of people go to their graves without unleashing their gifts. My grandmother used to say that every child is born with their little fists clenched. You come into this world holding your gifts. But some people take those gifts to their graves. The biggest places in the world are graveyards. They're full of people who had brilliant ideas, amazing stories, and they didn't have the courage to speak up and then write about it. So you're not just going to come out of this summit as a speaker, you're coming out as a published author as well. So it's exciting.
Wow, that is exciting. And I'll have, I know we'll have the link for people to apply so that they can, there's an application process, right? To be a speaker.
Yes. So the best thing is to go onto our landing page, the herstorycircle.com website, and just upload your information there. And then my team will get hold of you and start giving you instructions on what else we need.
Wonderful. Yeah, I hope that you get many people from the listeners, because there are so many people who have stories to share. I myself am a storyteller. I love the interaction and the wisdom that comes through in a well-told story. I've always been a storyteller. It's just, I think since childhood, I really enjoy cultures that share from story. It's a fun way to learn as well as share who you are.
And the healing comes out of the sharing. I say to a lot of the women who come onto the platform who've been raped, who've gone through domestic abuse and domestic violence, that when you share your story, it's like you're closing a chapter of your life. And then you can tell a different story. And the healing comes into the writing it out. That's why writing is so therapeutic. It's cathartic. It's like you're going back into a wound and you're cleaning it out, and then you're putting a band-aid over it and it'll heal. So the healing comes through the speaking as well. And then we are all holding the story with you. You're not carrying that burden alone. In South Africa, after apartheid, they had what was called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where people were not tried for the war crimes. They sat in the same room with a person who murdered their husband, their children, their uncles, their aunts. And on both sides, they shared their stories, and the healing came out of that. So it's very, very important to be able to articulate what's inside. People hold on to stories, and a lot of illnesses come out of that stuck energy of the emotional trauma that you've gone through. So storytelling is medicine. It's powerful.
Wow, that is powerful. That what healing comes from, because it's easy to demonize someone or be victimized by someone that you don't know and that you can't see and that you haven't talked to, and you only have a mental or emotional concept or story about. But when you get in a room and speak to them and hear them speak and share, I imagine the healing is really powerful then.
Some cultures in Africa where if somebody murders someone in the community, we don't have corporal punishment. That person is taken into the village square and the whole community come around them and form a circle. And every single person says something good about the person to remind them of the good inside them.
Wow.
It's a completely different way of looking at murder. That person did what they did, but there's still some good inside them. So healing comes out of that. Because a lot of times when you talk to people who go to a death row experience and watch somebody being executed, it actually doesn't make you feel any better seeing another person die for what they did. So imagine if we could change the world and reframe things in this way.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. But the healing comes from forgiveness. It doesn't come from, an eye for an eye, or from hurting someone else that hurt you. It comes from forgiving.
When you
Yeah,
forgive someone, you release yourself
yeah.
of the agony and the pain of what's happened.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So we have a little bit of time left, and something I would love for you to share, if you're willing, is you showed me, you might not have pictures available, that's fine, but you showed me yesterday these beautiful pictures of clothing, a clothing line that you make. And then there's this amazing story about the jewelry pieces that go with it. And the jewelry, I'd love for you to tell us what happens and where that jewelry comes from. And then if you have a picture, you're welcome to show these beautiful items that you make.
Yes.
I'll give
So
you.
I'm all about creating product that has a purpose. When I went through my separation and my divorce, I was, like I said, I was severely overweight. I had lost my self-confidence. And so I started making caftans. And caftans are loose, flowing dresses. And I'll show you a few pictures in a minute. And it turned into a clothing brand called Simzi Sani. Simzi Sani is an acronym for my children's names. My oldest son is Simbarashe. My daughter's name is Zianda. My youngest son is Dumisani. So Simzi Sani was the names put together. And it's a buy one, give one concept where if you buy a dress for yourself, we gift a dress to another woman in need. The clothes are beautiful. They are elegant. I'll show you a few pictures. And all of the jewelry pieces that go with the clothing are made by women in Zimbabwe. So I created a women's cooperative. So that's one of the kaftans, the evening wear.
Mm.
Absolutely exquisite dresses. There is another one. Now, this necklace, for example, can feed a family of 5 in Zimbabwe for a month if the woman who strung up the necklace can get paid what it's worth. The problem with poverty a lot of times is because people don't have access to the marketplace. They have people who come and buy their jewelry in bulk. So I make bracelets, we make rings, but the person who made it is not getting what their worth is worth. So there's a story to all of the product that we sell as well. I'm really passionate about this because I think if women started being more conscious about how they are spending their money and knowing that this pair of earrings that I'm wearing is going to feed a single mom who has 3 kids for a month, I would rather wear a wooden piece of earrings than a gold piece of earring that doesn't have an impact. So throughout our networking, we are creating these little cooperatives, giving women employment. You know, like right now, we're on a campaign where we are collecting secondhand cell phones. If a woman in Africa has got a good cell phone with a good camera, she can take a picture of her earrings, email it to us. We put it on our website, we sell it for her, and we transmit the money back onto her cell phone. So we're a country without a currency. Everybody uses their cell phones to transact. So
Hmm.
it's those little things that make a difference that really excite me about my work. And in setting up women's cooperatives, it's life changing. The women come together, they have 10, 100 sewing machines, they're making my dresses, we're shipping them out around the world, and they're able to look after their families and feed their children. So
Wow.
all of the clothing has an ethical and a good give back to communities that would never get an opportunity like that before.
That's incredible. And I love the way that you're forward thinking of it, and just helping everybody think too that everywhere that we put our dollars can be supporting and contributing to somebody else. And when we are willing to find those places and invest in things that are made by real people and make sure that they're going to the people that made them, it can really change lives. And
And it's about sustainability as well. Sorry for me to just
yeah, go
jump in
ahead.
here. The reason why I set up the cooperatives, I think I gave you an example of when we launched in Las Vegas. Our first conference was in Las Vegas. And I shared a story of how little girls in Zimbabwe don't go to school if they have a period because our government is not importing menstrual product at a price that the poorest of the poor can afford. So girls don't go to school. They have to sit home for 7, 8 days when they have a period. And I met the most beautiful woman from Riverside, California, who was working with her church group. And they were making reusable sanitary pads for girls in Guatemala. Her name is Jerry Olson. And Jerry said to me, Gertrude, I want to make 1,000 kits. So these kits come in a beautiful little pack with 8 pads. So there's an extra one for the week. They come in a little bag with 2 pairs of panties. Most little girls get raped because they don't have underwear. She puts in 2 bars of soap and a small little chart so they can chart their menstrual cycle. So she made 1,000 of these kits. They're sitting in Riverside, California right now, waiting for funding to be shipped to Zimbabwe. And then, of course, we've got the logistical issues of actually getting them to the continent, the shipping costs, the customs duty, trying to get them there at the lowest price possible. And then I said to Jerry, I'm so grateful for what you've done, but let's try and change the model in a small way. Can you record a video of how you make them? And can we collect sewing machines and overlockers and raise money so we can buy the fabric in Africa, train women how to do it there? And now we've done that. She has got dozens of sewing machines waiting to be shipped from California to Zimbabwe. And so now it's sustainable. We're now imparting the women on the continent to do it themselves. It's created employment for the mothers, and the little girls get to go to school. It's like a double-edged sword. And those are the stories that really excite me, when I can create something that is sustainable so that if anything happens to her story or to me, the projects continue without us having to be there. And that's when change really happens, when you empower women with the tools so they can help themselves. A lot of aid organizations don't work in Africa because people donate a lot of money to good causes and they mean well, but it's not sustainable. When you teach someone how to fish, that's when you start making a difference in the world.
Mm. Wow, that's incredible. I love all of these things that you're doing, and the entrepreneurship and the service to communities all around the world, and what beautiful things. And I know I have a couple cell phones lying around that I would be happy to
Send
send.
them to me.
Yeah, do you have a way to collect those? Where do they go?
Yes. So now what I'm doing is I will give you the address and you just ship them directly to Zimbabwe. My
Perfect.
team in Zimbabwe will pick them up and distribute them, and you'll get the picture of a woman in a remote village holding your phone, and you will see the impact that that gift has done
Mm.
in someone else's life as well.
I just love that you're constantly creating and thinking from that space of contribution and generosity and taking care of other people. And that truly is your, your sharing and your gift to the world and to inspire all of us listening. Where can I do that more? Where can I be more thoughtful and give more and be more generous and take care of the people that are less fortunate than we are?
My grandmother used to say that when you give to someone else, you're giving to yourself. She used to say that the universe is like a giant bank and you have to keep depositing good deeds. And those good deeds will come back tenfold from the most unexpected places, never from the people you give. So when I look at my so-called luck, all of these magical little things that happen in my life, I know I've been giving, and it comes back, and it's a magical way to live. It
Mm.
really is. It does come back in the most unexpected ways.
Just you are such a gem, Gertrude. I'm so happy that we connected, and that's just divine synchronicity. Everything you're doing just amazes me, and I'm so happy to have you in, in my world and to contribute to what you're doing and to share you with all of the viewers and listeners. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for being who you are in the world and your generosity and for all that you do.
Thank you, everybody who's listened in today. Please spread the word. They say that one person knows 250 other people. Direct people to our website. Come and be part of the movement. It is just going to be absolutely magical. And thank you again for allowing me to share today.
My pleasure. Absolutely. My pleasure to have you. And I wanted to say thank you all for being a part of this and for watching. And whatever you got out of this, pay it forward and share it with someone else. And I appreciate you all so very much. Have a beautiful day or evening wherever you are. And namaste.